This is the Bringing Business to Retail podcast, and today we're talking all about how to get your product into stores. But hold up, if you are a retail or e-commerce store owner, you do not want to skip past this episode because you can take everything that I'm going to share and then flip it and use it to assess the products and the brands that approach you to stock their range. Okay, you ready? Let's jump in.
Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast on SelenaKnight.com. Stay ahead of the competition by opening your doors to business experts so you can learn, grow, and be inspired. Passionate about bringing business strategies to independent retailers, please welcome your host, Selena Knight.
Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. If this is your first episode that you're listening to, welcome. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to share it with me. And if you've been a long-time listener, my heartfelt gratitude that you have been hanging around, because I know that you have so many podcasts to choose from and you have so many other things that you could be doing in your day. So I just wanted to have a little bit of a shout out and say thank you for tuning in today. Now, today's episode is titled How to Get Your Product into Stores. But like I alluded to in the intro, if you have your own store, either a retail or e-commerce store, I don't want you to flip past this episode because you can take everything that I'm going to share and then reverse it and use it to assess products and brands that approach you to stock their range. So it's a bit of a dual episode. You just have to take what I'm saying, and whether you're a product creator or a brand trying to get into stores, take what I'm saying and implement it. And if you have your own store, just flip it. And all these things that I'm saying, you can use them to streamline the way that you bring products into your store. So one of the first things that I want to point out is that it's very easy as a product creator or a manufacturer to feel like you're in competition with the stores that stock your product. But here's what I want to point out to you. Stores act as your agent. Whether they're online or they're physical stores, they are bringing people and introducing people to your brand that may never have even known that you existed. And they're doing that because they already have a rapport, they already have a client base, they already have people who love what they do and love what they sell. Now, your brand might just happen to fit into the range that they want to curate. So you have to understand that retailers, whether they're online or offline, are bringing your brand, bringing your products to customers that potentially may never have ever found you. So that's my first little tip is don't ever think you're in competition with your retailers because you're not. If anything, they're doing so much of the work for you that you should be embracing everything that they do and working together to help promote your brand and to help promote their store. But I also know that having been on both sides of the fence, having owned a retail and e-commerce business and also manufacturing our own products that we wholesaled, I've sat in both camps. And I think that gives me a little bit of a unique perspective to share with you what I think it takes to break through those barriers and get your products into stores. But also, like I mentioned on the flip side, if you are a retail or e-commerce store owner, the things you should be, maybe some systems that you should be putting in place and some questions that you should be asking these brands before they even make it into your product criteria, selection, flowchart, however it is you work out what brands you're going to stock. Now, before I jump into the specifics, I just want you to know that you don't have to be taking notes here. I have downloaded all of this goodness into a simple, easy download that explains everything, which you can grab for free over at SelenaKnight.com/product. And of course, I'll pop a link into the show notes. But again, whether you're a brand trying to break into stores, well, not break into stores, but break through the barrier and get your product into stores, or whether you're a store owner, this is a really good download. It's really meaty. It's like a really comprehensive guide, and you can take the information inside and use it in whichever circumstance suits you. So SelenaKnight.com/product, and you can grab this guide for free. So let's jump in. The first thing I have to point out is that in all of my years of buying for multiple stores as a retailer, I was always looking for products that suited my ideal customer. So first up, they had to fit into my product range. And you would be surprised at how many people would send me the most inane things, like the most inane products. We were a sustainable baby product store, and we would get people trying to sell us disposable products. So you have to understand who your market is. And I also wanted products that would work well with my current product mix. So it didn't necessarily have to be a new product, but it had to work with what we already stocked. But it also had to offer something different. So if you can't define why your product is different, you're going to have a really hard time getting someone to bring your brand on board. Now, then there's the obvious thing of it has to have a really good margin. If you're offering 20 or 30%, for most retailers, they just can't afford to take that on. They're looking at least 40 to 50% margin, which means they buy it from you for $10 and they're selling it for $18 to $20, excluding tax. That's what they need to cover their overheads. They're not being greedy, okay? That is just what the stats show. Now, if you're selling predominantly to e-commerce stores, you may be able to get away with a 35% margin. But if you are anything under that, you have to have a really awesome product that sells a lot of volume and that you're doing a lot of effort driving traffic to your customer stores before they even think about taking your product on. So the product also has to be saleable. That sounds so silly, doesn't it? But if you have a product that is lacking packaging, and I'm not a fan of packaging, but sometimes you need packaging to sell. If you've got a product that a retailer just doesn't know how to merchandise, then it's just going to be in the too hard basket. And you also have to be able to have good turnaround times. So if your products have lead times of 12, 18, 20 weeks because of indent orders or because they're handmade, these are the things that retailers are going to shy away from. So once you've done a little bit of research and you've actually looked at your ideal store, and that's probably point number one. Point number one is don't just send out email blasts to anyone and everyone. If you've bought an email list or if you've had someone do your research for you and you're just hoping that a blanket email to everybody is going to get you over the line, I can tell you now that retailers get those emails dozens of times every single week. And if it is as simple as, hey, I'd like to introduce you to my product, it's going to go in the delete folder. Okay, you need to be able to stand out. So I like to say you need to get your wholesale house in order. And that means making sure that you have the right insurances, making sure that you're registered for tax, making sure that you understand what account terms are and when are you going to offer them. And by account terms, I mean are you going to offer 30-day accounts, 60-day accounts, 90-day accounts? My little bit of advice here, even though I'm not qualified to give financial advice, is I probably wouldn't give anything more than 30 days. So you might do a 7-day account or a 14-day account or a 30-day account. And understand at what point does a customer qualify for that? Is it going to be after the first orders that they've paid for up front? Maybe it's usually 3. Industry standard is kind of 3 pro forma invoices, and pro forma means they pay up front. So once they've paid for their first 3 invoices up front, then they apply for account terms. But of course, you need to understand what account terms are going to do for your own cash flow. Now, should you have account terms? Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes. And I know that it can be a really difficult pill to swallow. But if you're in a market where I have 2 choices, I have your product or something similar, and the something similar is offering me account terms and in a 30-day account, then I'm probably going to choose the other person. The other thing you could offer is buy now, pay later. So if you are willing to swallow the 4, 5, 6% margin, which in all honesty, to get your money up front, I am all for it. Money now is worth so much more than money that you have to chase up. So think about how you're going to make it easy for your retailer to buy. Remember, we haven't even approached a retailer yet. All you're doing right now is just getting your wholesale house in order. So once you've got your tax and your account terms and your insurance and all that kind of stuff sorted, think about how a customer is going to order. Are they going to order online? Or do they have to email you a form? Now, this is going to vary between industries, but I have to say there are a couple of things for me as a retailer that were really important. The first one is the ability to just send a purchase order. And why is that important? Because when I'm managing multiple stores, I create a purchase order based on what each store needs. And then I'm going to send that purchase order to you so that you can fulfill it. Now, that is usually done in the back end of your point of sale system, and quite often this is automated. So you set what they call restocking levels. And once a product gets to a certain restocking level, it goes into a purchase order. So if I then have to print out a purchase order, go to your website, sit there and sift through all the products, add to cart what I need, and then go through checkout, that is a lot of time and money and effort that I am wasting versus just being able to send through a purchase order. Because when I send through a purchase order, not only do the people in each store know what to expect, but they also save a lot of time. So I can allocate different stock to different stores based on the rates that they sell. And this is a little bit of an oxymoron because usually I would just be saying to you, make sure that they can buy online. But you have to understand your client base. And if they are using point of sale systems, purchase orders are going to be the easiest way for them to order from you. The worst way in the world to have a retailer have to order is to make them fill out an Excel spreadsheet and email it to you. But even worse is to make them phone the order through. That means that they have to take time out of their very busy day during your working hours to send that order through. So think about the way your customer, which in this case is the retail store, think about the way they operate. Think about the systems that they're using, and maybe you just have to ask these questions. Because for some industries, maybe just logging into a portal and putting an online order through is going to be fine. But if you're dealing with anyone who is a decent size, purchase orders are probably going to be the way that they want to go. Okay, so once you've got that out of the way, I want you to take the next step, which is to have some kind of marketing plan. Now, this does not have to be a fully detailed spreadsheet, but you have to know how you're going to promote your products. And conversely, or additionally, I'm not sure which word we use, but you have to know how that's going to benefit your retailer. Because remember, you aren't in competition with them. So how are you going to promote your products? What kind of offers are you going to extend to your retailers? And when are you going to do those things? There is nothing worse as a retailer than just having bought a bunch of stock only to find that the supplier who sells direct to consumer has it at 30% off. And you were never offered the option to buy it at a cheaper price. And so if you want to discount 30%, you essentially make no money at all. So think about how you're going to market your products, and in that marketing plan, how do you intend to bring retailers and e-commerce store owners into that marketing mix? So once you've got all of those things together, it's only then that you can actually go and approach the stores that you want to stock your products. Oh, and I forgot something before we even get there. If you are a product creator or a brand or a supplier or a distributor, or on the flip side, if you're a retailer and you are looking to take on a new brand, the one thing that I cannot stress enough is that you have to have good images. As a retailer, I literally will not take on a brand if they don't have good images, or I will negotiate a discount so that I can go and get a photo shoot done. You cannot underestimate the power of good pictures. And when you are a brand, it is your job to convey a consistent message across all these retailers. If you have one store going off and doing a product shoot and another store going off and doing a product shoot, and let's just say One does your product in a steampunk version and one does your product in a Hamptons version. Sounds like it might be okay, but in reality, your brand has a vision, your brand has a mission, your brand has goals, and your brand has a target market. And if you're letting people go off and dilute your own brand, I'm sitting here literally waving my arms around. So if I've knocked the microphone, I apologize. But this is super important. If you do not have good photos of your products, and that means flat lay images, transparent backgrounds, and lifestyle photos, I'm going to say it's time for you to just step back and go and get those done before you approach any stores. So unless you have those, it's not really worth it, because all you're going to do is make your brand as the distributor or the product creator really look crappy. It's going to make you look really like you're not professional, really unprofessional. That's what I'm looking for. And it's just going to put a bad taste in the retailer's mouth. So I'm going to add that in. Once you have the good product shots, and when I say good product shots, I don't just mean getting your friends to take some photos. Go and look at what the competitors are doing. What styles of photos do they have? If I can get a hold of it, I will pop a link to the Iconics Style Guide. So there is a brand in Australia, well, a marketplace, I would say, called The Iconic. Just go and Google The Iconic Style Guide. And here's the thing. It is about 56 pages. It's lots and lots of photos, but I would recommend to any brand who is thinking about approaching a stockist to download that guide and just look at what they require. Now, most retailers aren't going to go to these kind of lengths. However, it is a really good overall picture of what you need to do to have professional brand shots. So Google the Iconic Style Guide, download it, and then once you've got your photos, then we can take the next step and approach the retailers. So I mentioned earlier that your products have to align with the store. So, and I also gave you that example of we had an eco product store and we would constantly get people trying to sell us plastic toys and disposable products, which were just totally at odds with the whole brand vision. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. When you go and compile your list, because that's what you're going to do first, when you compile your list of retailers and, well, let's just call it stockists. When you compile your list of stockists that you want to stock your product, you have to make sure that their brand and their vision align with the product that you sell. Otherwise, you're damaging your brand, you're leaving a bad taste in their mouth, and retailers talk to retailers. So if you're trying to sell your product to somebody who it's really not a good fit for, they're going to let other people know. Let me tell you this, they talk to each other. So to get ready to approach stockists, I want you to spend some time putting your ideal stockist list together and then doing some research and just starting with those top of the top stores. Like start high. Most people start really low because they're just hoping to get into anywhere. I'm saying flip it. Go and find those stores that you want to stock your product and go hard. So now that you've got your list, how do you get your product in front of the buyers or the store owners? And this is probably the hardest thing in the world that most brands and suppliers and product creators face. So the first thing you need to do is to head over to their website, because quite often retailers will have a section that allows you to submit your product. And if you submit it any other way, they just delete your email. So conversely, if you have a retail or e-commerce store, in the footer, I want you to go and add submit your product or submit your range. This is going to free up so much of your time. If you were anything like me, we would get dozens of requests for product samples. That's what I'm looking for product assessment. And most of the time they just had none of the information that we needed. So I want you to go and create a page, if you are a retailer, that allows a simple form that allows product brands to submit their range. And in there, you're going to ask them those questions that we hinted at before. Do they have insurance? Do they have packaging? What are their lead times? What are their account terms? What is their tax number? Ask them to submit a line sheet. Ask them to make sure, obviously, that they can upload files, and ask them to submit a line sheet. So then you have all the data that you need to assess an application. And obviously, if you've got any other rules, any other criteria, make sure you add those in as well. But if you're the product creator, the first thing you need to do is head to their website and see if there is any way that you should be submitting your product. Because if you do it any other way, they're just going to be deleted. And I have to say, like I keep saying this over and over again, after getting dozens and dozens of requests every week, if they did not come on our specific form, we wouldn't even look at them. We would just press delete because it showed that they had no attention to detail and they didn't care about our brand. So, number one thing, see if there is a specific way that brands want your product to be submitted. Now, the next one, if there is no way, what do? Do you just send a blanket email? Well, that's kind of an okay place to start. But when retailers are getting dozens of these emails, there's a pretty good chance that yours is going to be deleted. So I would send an email, but then follow up with a call and ask for an appointment time with the buyer. Yes, ask for an actual time to speak to the buyer. Don't ask if they're available right now, because they're probably not. In most cases, buyers aren't actually in the store all day, every day. So the first thing you want to do if you are on the phone, and yes, you are going to have to pick up the phone, is ask to speak to the buyer, and then don't go and try and pitch your products. I want you to be very respectful and say you have a product that you think will suit the range and you would love to make a time to speak with them to present what you have to offer. And that way, you are being very respectful. You aren't trying to sell to them the minute that you speak to them, and they're more likely to give you a time. Now, if you can't get hold of the buyer, and sometimes this will happen in smaller stores, maybe it's the owner who does the buying, and they'll say, drop me an email. So drop the email, send the email through, again, requesting a time. And this is where you can set yourself apart from the competition. If you go and create a scheduler, so there are free tools like Calendly, which is a scheduler that allows people to book in a time to speak with you. And you can do this presentation on Zoom, you can do this presentation over the phone, you set it up the way you like. So Calendly is one of the options that we use. We use the paid version, but there is a free version. But if you have a scheduling calendar, it does mean that the pressure is off you playing email or phone tag. You can simply send the link through and ask them to book in a time. And the great thing about this is if they don't book in a time within a certain time frame, you can just do a quick refresh. Say, hey, I know you're super busy. I noticed that you haven't booked a time in. I'm just going to pop a link to my calendar in here again. It would be great if we could chat before the end of the week. Now, a word of warning here. There's a pretty good chance that you're still not going to get a reply. Because remember, in this pitch, and we haven't really talked about what you need to put in the pitch, but we kind of have. In fact, if you go right back to the beginning, I listed off about 7 things. If you put those 7 things in your pitch, you've got a much better chance of actually booking a time in. But if you get through and you've made the phone call and you've sent the scheduling calendar and you're still not getting a reply, at what point do you give up? Well, here's the thing. Most people will give up after 3 goes. But stats show that, well, stats being a lot of research that I've carried out, show that for most retailers, they probably need around 7 to 10 reminders. So if you are bowing out after 3 emails, thinking that you're being a little bit too pushy, I urge you to keep on at it. Essentially, if a retailer doesn't like your stuff, they'll probably just write back and say, I don't think this is for us. And at that point, great, take them off your list. Even better, if you are a little bit technical here, and this is what I would do if I was you, and this is what I do with my one-on-one clients, so I'm sharing some secrets with you here. We actually put these emails into an automation. So those emails get sent out automatically based on whether the retailer has booked a call with you or not booked a call with you. So all of the emotion on your side of the fence is taken away. You don't have to feel bad about constantly bugging retailers. If you put it in an automation, it's all automated. As soon as they make the booking, then you show up on the call. But if they don't make the booking, those emails will continue to go out until either they make an appointment or they unsubscribe from your list. Now, I just want to pop another handy hint in here because, like I said, I've worked with a lot of product creators and I've heard firsthand, I've seen the tears when they haven't managed to break into a store that they think is the perfect fit. On some occasions, you're going to get a response like, well, we like your product, but it's just not a right fit at the moment. That could mean so many different things, but it could mean that they already have several products that are very, very similar. Or they might have an exclusive agreement with a brand. You never know what the answer to that is unless you ask. But here's the thing. If you get that kind of response, if they say something along those lines to you, this is the perfect time when you have to step in and say, I totally understand. How about I check back with you in 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 3 months, whatever that number looks like for you. And then you have to mark it down in your diary to make sure to do that. Because sometimes you just approach the right retailer at the wrong time. And it's just a timing thing. It's not about you. It's not about your products. It's just not the right fit at the right time. So this is where it is super important to keep yourself a spreadsheet or keep yourself a diary and make sure that you are following up those phone calls. Remember, for a lot of people, it's going to take 10 interactions before they even look at your brand. So what do you do if you get that horrible, dreaded rejection email or that retailer that just says, I'm sorry, your product isn't for us? Well, I'm sure you're going to feel very dejected and you're probably going to want to feel like having a few glasses of wine, but I'm going to say flip it. Oh, before I say flip it, let's just flip this whole conversation and say to retailers, if there's a product that you don't like and it doesn't fit, please tell those product creators. Just make sure that you tell them that it's not the right fit, because otherwise they're going to keep bugging you, especially if they've listened to this podcast. So just be forthright and say, look, it's not for us. But let's flip it back and say, as a product creator, if you get that email or if you get that conversation that says it's not for us, don't just say thank you and then hang up. Okay? At this point, you're probably going to feel totally crap and you're going to want to slam down the phone and say a few curse words. But this is where I urge you to change your mindset and change your thinking. This is where I want you to ask a store owner, quite simply, can you tell me a little bit about why? I know this sounds really, really scary. And for the most part, it's probably not going to be that your product is crap. It's going to be that they either have something already similar, or they don't like the price point, or they don't like your packaging. But this is free market research. And if you just hang up the phone, you won't know what to fix on your next pitch. So conversely, retailers, if someone approaches you and you don't want the product, tell them why. Be honest with them and say, it doesn't suit our range, or we've already got something similar, or we've got an exclusive agreement. So that when they go and approach the next store, they know what they need to change. They know how to pitch their product differently. It's kind of being cruel to be kind, but you don't have to be nasty about it. If you just give them your honest opinion, and if the product is just crap, just say to them, the product doesn't align with our values. But retailers, you're not doing those suppliers and distributors any favors by just saying no. And conversely, product creators and distributors and brands, you need to be asking why. Because if you don't know why, maybe it's something as simple as we don't like the packaging or the images aren't good enough. If this is something that you can fix really easily, perfect. You can go and fix those things before you pitch to the next brand. Because in some cases, you may never get a second go at some brands. And I'm just going to pop in quickly and give you an example. I worked with one product creator who desperately wanted to get into this store. she had been trying for 10 years to get into her ideal store. And it wasn't, and she'd been rejected several times. And it wasn't until I told her to go back and ask them why that we worked out the problem. And quite simply, the packaging didn't work for the type of store that they were. So we just changed the packaging, and within, I think it was 2 months, her product was in that store. So instead of biting the bullet and just asking what the problem is and being able to fix it really, really quickly, instead she spent 10 years coveting her placement in this store. And I don't want that to be you, okay? I want you to get your product into the stores who are going to sell it for you. And retailers want products that sell well. So if you work together, you can end up with a beautiful win-win situation. So with that, I have pumped you with loads of information. But as I said right at the beginning, I've put all of this together in a free download for you, which you can grab over at selenaknight.com/product. All of this is condensed down into about 8 pages, but step by step, you can walk through it, and then you will feel super confident pitching your product to stores. And if you are a retailer, I still recommend that you go and grab it, because these are the things that you can implement into your store to streamline the buying process. selenaknight.com/product. Can't wait to see you next week. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you on the podcast. Same time, same place next week. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selenaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selenaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.